Hello, IT enthusiasts. Welcome to another episode of My Computer Careers Get Into IT Live, where we do just that, get into all things IT. As always, thank you so much for joining us on your Friday at noon, and the trifecta is your Friday before a holiday weekend. So, for anyone who's here, we certainly appreciate it. We're going to have a fun chat with our guest, and I will properly introduce you in just a minute, Steve. But just to kick things off, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely happy to be here.
So every 5 weeks or so on this program, we try to dig into topics, related to education to help students and anyone interested in IT kind of better understand various aspects of IT training. So this week we decided that we're going to dig into one of the most common topics and one of the most exciting courses that we hear about, and that's certified ethical hacking. And we couldn't be joined by a better person to help us with that than Steve, to kind of dig into things a little bit. So let me give the background of Steve, not Stephen Graham. Steve serves as Senior Vice President of EC Council Global. He joined the company in 2005, and during his time at EC Council has led the development of multiple divisions, including iClass, which is their online learning division, iLabs, Education Technology and Cyber Range division, as well as Academia, Tailored Education divisions for K through 12 and 2 and 4 year institutions, as well as EC Council's U.S. government business units serving our armed forces. There's more. Steve is dedicated to the development of the cybersecurity profession and is passionate about the use of advanced technologies in the classroom for the continuous development of tactical cybersecurity skills. One, that's well said, and two, really happy to have you.
So, thanks so much for inviting me.
Steve's in Tampa right now, and he was just catching me up on kind of his holiday weekend plans, and they don't sound like much of a holiday, but we've all been there before. Steve will be working. That's how it goes. Steve, why don't we just dig in? What do you say?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. Kick things off. Ethical hacking. It's a phrase that stands out and it certainly attracts a lot of interest. Do you mind just giving us an overview of CEH and also what the heck is ethical hacking?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's a profession that has developed significantly, obviously, since I joined EC Council. When I started, the concept of hacking, the fact that you employ a hacker in a company, it was almost like it was a bad word.
Yeah.
I remember we used to call companies and say, hey, how are you guys assessing your security posture? Have you ever considered hacking yourselves? And everybody would get scared. They'd hang up the phone. It was a different world then. But what it's developed into, the concept of ethical hacking, right? You're going to take on the persona of a hacker as a security professional. You look at how they're going to attack an organization, and the idea is use the same techniques and tricks and things that they do to break into your own network. So your job is to find those vulnerabilities before the bad guys do,
right,
and ultimately fix them. So the crux of what certified ethical hacking is, you're going to use those same tactics, techniques, procedures that hackers use to assess your own network, identify what defenses you can put in place. And it's this constant evolution process. So it's a methodology that we teach in the class that teaches you how to break in.
Got it. And it's amazing to hear, how much things have evolved since, it's been 20 years since you joined. So, I mean, in 20 years time, we've seen so many advances, and so, the thinking is so much different. And it's nice to watch that evolution. And I'm sure that it's good for you too.
That's incredible.
So just talk about the course a little bit. Certified ethical hacking, is it a good course for early learners, in their journey? And would the course also be beneficial for someone with a bit more knowledge or experience under their belt?
It is. So, the CEH, I think a lot of folks that I've worked with over the years, it's not always exactly what they expected, right? When they get into the course. A lot of training that you go through vendor training, like from Microsoft, and, vendor training from Cisco, now AWS and the cloud things. And you're learning configurations, like best practices for those tools. And it's usually a very regimented training program. What I think becomes surprising about CEH, and this I think lends to the portability of the program. Is there's a big psychological aspect to CEH, right? It's a really cool job. And this is one of the things when you start learning the techniques of how you evaluate an organization, it's how creative can you get, right? How many different ways can we find a pathway into the organization? So it's not just about, specific tools or how you configure something. It's about the psychology of it. It's how creative can you get as you assess a network. And depending on how you develop those skills, whether, CEH is an entry point for you and you're just getting into a cybersecurity field, or you're trying to really shore up that process, where maybe you're part of a pen testing team or you're a threat hunter, in a SOC. When you start to really kind of fortify those skills and figure out what path you want to learn, what technologies you're around, it can be that entry point for you, or it can be a specialization point, just kind of depending on where you're at in your career. So I think it works in both, but it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, what the outcome is for you as a professional.
Got it. Okay. And hopefully this isn't redundant, but just to, I guess, dig in a little further, the course itself, what can learners expect? What are they going to walk away with? What are they going to learn through the course?
Yeah, so you're going to learn a methodology, right? And that's one of the things I think is really unique about the program. And, a lot of folks that I talk to, they're like, how in the world have you been in the same place, same job for 17 years? There's been a lot of work to do here, right? And I've been busy that whole 17 years. But the simple fact is the methodology that we taught in CEH in 2001 when the program was built and the methodology that we teach now, it's the same methodology, right? It's the same approach. This is a process for how you break into an organization. And it's a very thorough process. So the targets, the techniques, the tools that we use change, but the methodology stays the same. So because we've been teaching that same thing the entire time, when you come into the course, you're going to learn the 5 phases of ethical hacking. And you're going to learn within each one of those phases, there's a process that you need to take. It's not enough to, just spray and pray on a network and see what happens, right? You have to systematically evaluate every single thing on the network if you're going to own it. And it's that constant process that you're going to learn. So when you start with reconnaissance, right, building your target footprints, identifying what's there on the network, we're going to teach that process, a variety of different ways to do it, whether it's open source tools or it's commercial tools that are available. But we're going to teach you that kind of math behind the calculator of how you do the assessment. And then how do you look at the outcome? And what does that really mean to the organization that you work for? Are you going to be able to do something with it? Can you, are you fighting an active attack? Are you setting up defenses before it happens? Are you responding to something? Whatever it is, it becomes applicable in each one of those areas. But you're going to learn those 5 phases. You're going to learn the tools that are available. You're going to learn a broad range of tools that are available. Mm-hmm. So you're not limited to one vendor or one way of doing something. You're kind of learning the crux of how it works. And then that gives you the foundation to build on after the course, obviously. Once you know what network scanning is and what it does, you're going to go learn, what are the right, tactics and procedures that I'm going to use in my organization. And that stretches across the entire life cycle, from identifying the targets, doing your vulnerability analysis, all the way down to how do I exploit things? How do I break into websites? How do I break into cloud services? How do I hack into web servers? How do I attack endpoints? And when you learn those things, now you kind of know what the hackers are doing, because they're always going to go after the weakest link. And the question I think every organization has to ask is, what's my weakest link? And do I have the knowledge to figure that out? And that's what CH is going to give you. It's going to give you the ability to point on where the big risks are in the organization.
Got it. So it sounds to me like that foundational knowledge you have to have on steroids.
Yeah, you need, so in the, if you go out to the site and you look at CH, we recommend 2 years IT security experience before you jump into the course. Do you have to have it? No. Should you have it? Yeah, I think so. Right. You want to understand, what is a network? What is TCP/IP? How are computers communicating with each other? You want to know all the functional elements of a network, so that when we're teaching you, like, for instance, we're not going to teach you what a firewall is. That's an awareness level, kind of entry assessment level course. Mm-hmm. What we're going to teach you is how hackers break into them and how they evade firewalls and how they hack the services that are set up around those. Or, in what's kind of the new world, firewalls are sort of going away, right? There's new ways that we're protecting data, and we're not necessarily protecting the perimeter. So now it's, all right, let's start getting into cryptography. Let's get into, how those different algorithms work and identify how to tear files apart. So if you don't know, what those file structures are, you don't understand the basics of like what HTTPS actually is, you might be a little bit lost in the class. You'll have to do some hard studying
Yeah.
to catch up, because it's definitely a fire hose.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, this level of information is so helpful to so many students who are in the course right now or thinking about going into the course. But for those students that are in the course, this is obviously not your first day around this certification or around this course. You have danced this dance before. At some point, I'm sure that students are going to struggle. They're going to find a point in the program where they're not sure if they're going to want to keep going or if they're just stuck. What does that point look like in the course? And if people are struggling with concepts, how do they move past those sticking points?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a common question that happens, but I think it happens anywhere, right?
Yep.
This would happen no matter what program you're going through. If it's CEH, or you're going for a degree, or you're trying to learn, a new cloud technology, you're going to run into these things just as a human. I think the trick is, you got to have the resolve not to give up, and you got to figure out what things are actually tripping you up. So as you're going through those studies, you look at, what's on the exam, what are the things that you're going to be assessed on. But even more important than the certification, these are foundational things that, we're not making this up. It's not some proprietary thing that EC Council came up with. We're talking about real world technologies and the way they operate. So if you're getting tripped up in the program and you're feeling like, hey, this is kind of overwhelming, break it down into its individual parts, right? What is the part of that course that you're struggling with? Is it networking? Is it a programming element? Is it something that a tool's doing that you don't understand what it is? And I think you have to learn kind of some of those supporting objectives. So I remember when, very early on in the program, right, I was just learning what network scanning was, and I felt really overwhelmed by Nmap. For someone who's really experienced in this, that's going to sound like a silly comment, right? Because they use this day in and day out. Just like, business people would use Word or Excel or, the CRM, you kind of get used to that after a while when you're in the environment. But for me, Nmap was like, I was fairly new to doing command line stuff. I was used to the Windows point and click. I like to click on an icon and have everything presented to me and prepared. And the security world just really isn't like that. You're doing a lot of stuff in the command line. You're entering a lot of code. It's not as smooth a process all the time.
Sure.
So for Nmap, it had a lot of switches, right? Every time you type Nmap, there's something you've got to add on to the end. You got to specify the IP address. If you're doing a service scan, that's an SV. And if you're doing a TCP/IP, echo ping sweep, that's a different command. What I realized very quickly is I felt completely overwhelmed by the amount of things that were there. And the way I got through it was learning, one, what is Nmap actually doing? And then when you talk about a ping sweep, as a simple topic that I'm using here, what is it actually doing in the first place? Those are kind of those foundational, like how do networks communicate? When you identify that, now you start learning how to rattle the doors, right? How to start, getting a little bit more advanced with that kind of tech. So I would say take a step back if you're feeling overwhelmed and figure out what the underlying technology it is that's causing the confusion. And there are a variety of ways to learn those, right? We've got essentials programs that build it into structured learning. We've got some lead up programs, and we offer a lot of those resources for free. Through our partners like MyComputerCareer, we've got them on the website. Or Google can be your best friend and your worst enemy in cases like this. Yeah. You can't always trust what you find there, but if you can find a good resource or a good mentor, somebody that you trust, that really tears these things apart and explains what they are. A lot of that foundational content, because it's so common, it's easy to find the information you need. Beef up that core skill and then go work on, hacking it.
Love it. I love that. Break the course down into individual parts. And this is a question for later, and you touched on it a little bit here, but let's just dig into that. It's important for students to remember that not everybody learns the same way. You can sit in a classroom at MyCC and it may click and it may not. You can be, training on your own and it may work great for you or it may not. So we always encourage people to go use all the resources they have at their fingertips. If you're with EC Council or if you're at MyComputerCareer, wherever you are in your studies, go tap into YouTube or go tap into Google if it makes sense. Are there any other resources like that you could think of? People always talk about the majority of folks talk about Discord and they talk about YouTube when they're training. Would you recommend those two sites as well?
Yeah, but know who you trust.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like that trust but verify process. The challenge I find is some of the concepts, right? They're pretty advanced. And what you will find when you go Google something, especially around a cybersecurity topic, is you'll find discussion forums. There's tremendous amounts of information there, and there's tremendous amounts of misinformation. So you have to be careful. Like, you need to trust where you're getting your information. So what I would say is you might find, 5,000 blog posts on a certain topic, but you need to find the ones that come from influencers that you can trust.
Yeah.
Right? People who have walked that path, maybe they've done the job and they're going to provide good information instead of just, sling a bunch of questions up and try to cause, I don't know. The internet's kind of full of clickbait and people trying to get ad traffic.
No doubt.
And to me, that's a giant waste of time, because you're going to end up reading just at the surface level. You're not going to learn what's necessary. And you've got to dig at least a layer deeper. So either trust where you get the information or look at some of these structured learning programs, because we're not in this for ad dollars, right? That's not why we're structuring learning and putting all the time into, assembling courses. But they are good resources. Just know where you're getting your information.
Trust but verify, spoken like a true cybersecurity professional. I love it. Well done. Comment from Austin. So true. Taking things back to the fundamentals is beneficial in getting through struggles in school, work, sports, everything. Well said, Austin. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Why don't we talk testing a little bit? Students ultimately study their tails off, and then that exam agita starts to show up. We got to test. We got to take the exam. Maybe you can ease folks' minds a bit here. What can prospective test takers expect in the exam?
Yeah. So number one, know the structure of what you're walking into. That's the first thing, right? The first thing that you learn in the CEH program is reconnaissance. You're going to learn how to evaluate your target. So in this case, treat the test like your target. Know what you're walking into. So you can go out to, we've got a site, cert.ecouncil.org. Obviously, as a certification body, these certifications are ANAB accredited, so they've been through external, audits to make sure that the way we're credentialing people is, industry accepted, and they HIP check us constantly. So a lot of the material EC Council brings out, it's built by external councils. We have job task analysis committees that assemble all the domains on the exam, and these are, the CEH JTA committee had 75 people on it. And, from all walks of life, all industries, they don't work for us. But what they do is they come together, and their job is to say, listen, if we're going to certify people in an area, especially if we're going to raise skills in cyber, let's make sure it's in the right areas around the companies. So what's the outcome of that? Well, the outcome is the domain list. That's the CEH domains, right? So if you go to cert.ecouncil.org, go to certification and click on the domains, you'll find the blueprint and the CEH handbook. That blueprint lists each one of the exam domains, and under the exam domains is each one of the sub areas that we're going to test on. And you can see weightage of how many tests, basically how many questions are going to be on the test in that area. So what I would say is understand the domains that we test on, and then link those things as you're going through the learning to make sure you feel comfortable with the content in those domains. If one of those looks foreign, don't sit the exam. Go study that section of the course, right? Pay attention, beef up in that area.
Yeah.
But as far as the way the questions are structured, most of our questions, there's two tests for the CEH, right? We've got the multiple choice questions. So, that one, you've got about a 70% cut score. So you can get roughly 30% of the questions wrong and still pass. So it's a difficult test, but it's mostly multiple choice. They're all designed as scenario-based questions. So we're not trying to trip you up in the way those questions are designed. We're giving a scenario where, listen, you've come across this on a network. Here's the situation. What's the way that you approach it? And sometimes it's, individual tools that you need to use. Sometimes it's switches on those tools. Like I mentioned Nmap. I can't say what's on the test, but there could be, potentially some command line type stuff that you would have learned in the course. I think the hands-on elements, you asked a couple of minutes ago, I recognize this is a long answer, but you asked about, different learning formats. So being able to go through the labs and do the hands-on components becomes a super important element, because you're going to learn a lot if you're a kinesthetic learner.
Patricia, are you seeing Steve's gone?
Yes, I am. Hopefully
Okay.
we will hear back from him very soon.
He may have a little glitch in his internet. So we will hang here and see if Steve can come back on. I'm sure that he'll be able to. And EC Council folks, I'm sure that you'll ping Steve and let him know. I don't think it's on this end because we seem to be working okay. So Patricia, obviously I see that you've shared the EC Council website.
Yes, that's in the comments.
Patricia doesn't want to show her face because she's wearing, what's the t-shirt you're wearing?
It's a Dungeons and Dragons and Diners and Dive-Ins.
There you go, folks.
It's a very I don't know. It's a long weekend. Okay, I put on my fun shirt for Friday.
I understand. We're heading into a weekend. No big deal. So obviously, folks, if you're watching this, if nothing else, make sure that you pay attention to Steve's advice with navigating the course and navigating the exam, breaking it down into parts. I think that's such strong advice. And then head over to EC Council's website, check all of their resources. And then I'm obviously going to say go over to our website, because this is a course that we offer through EC Council. And there's a lot of resources there for you as well. I would recommend that highly. EC Council is a wonderful organization.
I put it in the comments, but here it is as well.
Yeah.
Just
There you go. Steve's on LinkedIn. So, if you're so inclined, go check him out there. And, if you're in the industry or want to be in the industry, I'd recommend following EC Council, because that's where you're going to gain all of that knowledge, and you're going to see updates and be able to speak in an educated way about what's happening in cybersecurity and what's happening in hacking.
I put that his LinkedIn in the comments as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Right on top of it, of course. Patricia, we got any business we want to share for My Computer Career?
I know we have a couple of giveaways going on.
Oh, there's Steve.
But there's Steve, so spare me the...
You're back. We've been vamping.
This is what happens, right?
Always.
You start talking about the test and stuff.
That's exactly right. I think you went out again. Can you hear us? All right, folks. It looks like Steve's having a bit of trouble. I tell you what we'll do. We'll hang just a little bit longer. Patricia, you want to jump back on?
Yes, I will.
What were you just going to say about MyCC?
Pulling up the giveaway really quick. I know we were working with one.
Yeah, folks. Okay, here's the thing. This is one of those things that amazes me. We have a giveaway. We have a new swag store, and we have a bunch of stuff we're giving away from My Computer Career. Go check out this post. Literally, all you have to do is tag someone and comment on it, and there's a good chance you'll win, because we don't have a lot of people that have done so. And I think it's like $150 by the time it's all said and done. An earbud case. What else was in it, Patricia?
No, my internet is also shot. I'm just trying to pull it up and see.
One of those days. I think it was a trucker hat.
Yeah, notebook, trucker hat, laptop sleeve, and a nice insulated cup. I can pull up the post here.
Now, to be fair, it all says My Computer Career, but we want you to get out there and rap us a little bit. So an opportunity for some free stuff. It's on all of our channels, so just go check it out. You have to go find the post, but go ahead and comment. I have a feeling you have a good chance to win.
Aaron, hoping I'm back and coming through well.
There you are. Hey, Steve. You are back, and you are coming through well. We did not get hacked. We do trust, so everything is fine here.
Consider it a commercial break. How about that?
Exactly right. We did a little MyCC business, so it was perfect. It worked out well. Glad to have you back. I think you were just kind of finishing up exam and talking it through a little bit. I think that we just got to the end. Was there anything else you wanted to say there?
Yeah, I'm not sure where I actually cut out, but I think go to the cert site, look at the domains.
Yep.
And in prepping for the exam, you've got Aaron, you had touched on different learning styles, right? So if you're a kinesthetic learner, like me personally, You'll notice in the intro, I'm super passionate about the use of tech in the program. So we have a heavy hands-on element with CEH, lots of labs and chances to get your hands on the actual technology. For me, that's the place I learn, right? It's if I've got objectives like breaking into a web server, I want to learn all the steps and techniques and tricks to get there. And sometimes that means, I go out and find a resource that's better at this than I am, identify what they say about that tool or that attack or that exploit. And then I go practice it, right? Learn it inside out. And then when I go sit that domain, for the exam, not only have I had hands-on, I've practiced that actual skill. But obviously I've been presented all the different key terms and the switches and things in the course. So the test just becomes second nature.
Really glad you called that out. The hands-on is so important, folks. You're not just going to sit in front of a slideshow. You're actually going to learn and have your hands into this thing. So that's really important. Love to hear it. Thank you for calling that out. Bit of an aside, but I think it's something that's important to mention. We have a lot of folks that work their way through the course. They bust their tails, they get to the end, and they either don't test or they don't retest, which, happens. People do fail the course. That happens. They don't retest. How important would you say completing the exam and earning that cert is for students?
It's a valuable element, right? I think a lot of people come to the course and they find that the difference is we put a lot of work into building our learning ecosystem, not just the certification. And you get real value, whether you get certified or not. There's real value from going through the training and learning the techniques and what you're going to be able to take away and use on the job. But the certification itself, if you're in a compliance environment, it's important to your organization to be able to say that we've got certified cybersecurity professionals. It's a matter of trust and kind of validating that, hey, the people on our systems have at least gone through the steps to prove to the organization they have what it takes. But if you're the persona where you're looking for a job or you're trying to get a better career, maybe you're moving from IT into cyber, just think of yourself sitting in a room with 5, 6, 7 other people going after the same job. And if they all have the certification and you don't, they're going to pass on you, right? There's an HR value to having those things, and that's a matter of just building your career. And that leads to another question. I don't know if you're going to ask this or not, but it's, how do I know which certification to get? Right. And you'll get different answers from different people you ask that question to. My advice is always get as many as you can. There's really no right or wrong. Like, if I pick this cert, it's going to send me down a certain path. That's not true. If you have the time and your company's willing to fund it, or you're able to go after and finance these things, I think the more education, the more things that you can add on, the more personal value you can kind of display to a potential hire. The more knowledge you're going to have in the end. You can't really go wrong.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. But I would say for those specific to your question, those that complete the training and don't test, right? If you have that exam anxiety, if there's something that's holding you back from sitting the exam, relax. It's not the end of the world, even if you fail, right? Failing is a part of learning. Right. And for me, you will have already seen the exam once. You kind of know what the questions are like, yep. And you may have more insight as to what you need to study. I will forewarn you, it's not going to be the same exam when you go back, right? The question banks rotate, they change. It's not always the same exam that we deliver. So there's multiple different exam formats. That's a part of running a legitimate certification body. But you'll have an idea of the structure of the questions. You'll have an idea of the places that you might have had some room for improvement, right? And it gives you a path to go back and study. But a lot of cases, we offer free retakes on our vouchers. So even if you fail, you're going to be able to go back in and retake that test. For us, there's no specific limit. I think the ANAB accredited limit is like 5 attempts in a year, which in 20 years, maybe 3 people or so have taken that many.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's not many over, 700,000 people that have been through the program. It doesn't happen very often. So don't be afraid of failing, but be confident that the training, everything you're going to receive from MyComputerCareer, they're going to help prepare you for what you're about to take on.
Absolutely. Do not be afraid of failing. You're going to gain all kinds of knowledge in the course no matter what, but go get that exam. And I can tell you just, from a MyCC perspective, we have folks in our organization, instructors, people who have been doing this like you for years and years and years, that are still out getting certifications that haven't stopped learning and still fail those exams from time to time. It happens. They're hard. But the difference is they turn back around, dig back in, just like Steve's saying, and keep going, which you have to do in IT. Have to. I love it.
Yeah,
okay.
You really can't.
Sorry?
Yeah, you just really can't give up.
Yeah. Sorry, there was a little delay there. You're good. All right. So you're mentioning careers. Obviously, folks aren't doing this just for the fun of it. They're doing it because they want to get jobs. And I know a lot of the certs that you all create and probably all, are designed with careers in mind as well. So do you mind sharing what roles people might be equipped to handle by earning CEH, of course, with continued learning, but what are those roles that they might be ready for?
Yeah, so there's a variety of them. So I'll tell you, CEH is not designed around a specific job role.
Got it.
You can see a variety of job roles on our website if you go to the CEH page of job roles that typically CEH is required to do. But speaking to those jobs, you could be anything from a SOC analyst. So if you're working in a security operations center, there's usually multiple tiers of individuals there. So like a SOC analyst level 1, they're going to be doing your basic log analysis, incident triage. They're watching the network, identifying problems. And then level 2 is where you get into kind of that threat hunting in a lot of security operations centers.
Sure.
So when you identify, yes, this is a real event, it's a real attack, it's something we need to go investigate, we need to deal with, they'll escalate it to that level 2. And that's where you need that hunting capability, right? It's more than watching log files and analyzing traffic. Now you're actively hunting in a network, and you need to understand those skills. That's some of the stuff that CH will teach you. So it gives you that pathway into threat hunting. It gives you a pathway into analyzing the networks. If you want to work on a penetration testing team, so you want to be a vulnerability analyst,
yep.
It's great specifically for that position. But I'll tell you, CH serves as a foundation because you're learning how hackers operate. Whatever role you take in cybersecurity, understanding the capability of a hacker helps to enhance your ability to do that role, right? So if I'm a forensic investigator, this is a lot different than what you learn in CEH, right? But if I'm a forensic investigator and my job is, to go in and look at events on a network, make sure that my organization has a forensic readiness, I need to know how creative hackers are going to get, right? And where they're going to go on the network. And understanding that process actually makes me a better forensic investigator in the long run. So that's one of those cases where if you're stacking credentials, if you're a software developer, right, and you're handling a DevSecOps process, how do hackers attack code? How do they go after software systems? If you've never seen how that operates, you can still, I'm not saying you have to be a CEH to be a great secure coder, but if you know how the hackers operate in that world, you're going to think about that as you're designing code, as you're designing those automated processes. So it gives you a pathway into being better at a lot of those jobs. But the specific job role, if you're going to jump in, get CH certified and get a job right away, most of the time it's going to kind of filter around an information security analyst.
Got it.
So that entry process is on, help desk, SOC level 1 analysts, cybersecurity technicians. And then as soon as you go into information security analyst, that's where the proactive security work is happening.
Okay. So I want to keep the conversation going around careers, but speaking of careers, we have a question from Lex over on LinkedIn. How do you maintain the CEH certification?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's the minimum requirements, right? As a ANAB accredited certification body, you have to have continuing education credits. So on that same cert.acouncil.org website, we list the actual certification requirements. So the number of continuing education credits you need to get per year. It's a 3-year recertification cycle. So you have to at least be working on the skills and keeping them current in order to keep your CEH maintained. But more than just the maintenance requirement, and you can get those anywhere, by the way. You don't have to come back to a specific area. We want to see you're going to conferences and you're learning new techniques, and maybe you're publishing articles, and you're contributing to the cybersecurity community, which is going to help you be a better operator anyway. But the real question is, how do I take that foundation that I learned in CEH and become really good at what I do? And that means diving in. And in that process, like let's say, for instance, you're the cloud security engineer for your organization. it's time to really dig deep in that case on cloud technologies. You're going to have to learn everything about the hybrid clouds that your organization uses, all the different interfaces, the connections, you name it. So you're going to really start to focus in on those cloud technologies and how they're getting attacked. In the process, structure your learning. You'll get all of your continuing ed along the way just by getting better at your job.
Perfect. And Lex, I do see your other question about the mindset on taking CEH. Steve did touch on that earlier in our chat. So when this is finished, this will be on all of our channels. I'd recommend go back, watch that. He provided some great advice. Okay, careers. This is kind of a big question, but cybersecurity is a widely discussed field. But there are some real concerns with the employment and skills gap in the industry. We hear it a lot. It's in the news. It is a reality. Are there viable entry-level options in cybersecurity?
Yes, there are.
Great.
The question is, how do you approach those things, right?
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a disparity here. When we talk about CEH, remember, I said I recommend 2 years IT security experience before going into the program.
Right.
Most likely, you're going to need 2 years IT security experience with the organization before they trust you to rattle the doors on their network, right? Unless you're a managed service provider or you're a consultant, they're trusting, through their liability insurance and contracts that they're going to bring on that, if you break the network, you're going to have insurance that pays for it. But a lot of this is trust, because a certified ethical hacker, I want you to just think about the process. If I want to assess a network for vulnerability, I'm going to give this person, we won't go into all the details, but say, in a white hat situation where I give them all the information about the network they're going after. And I say, I want you to find how hackers are going to break into my network. What if they start rattling the doors on the CEO's machine? And suddenly they crack into his machine. There's sensitive information on a CEO's box, right? Whether it's in his OneDrive or, wherever it is. That person now has access to what you could say are, classified or sensitive documents inside of a company. Do you do that for a brand new hire their first week on the job, or do you establish trust? You have to establish that trust. So that's kind of the gap. When you talk about cybersecurity, there are so many roles in cybersecurity, and it's becoming much more prevalent. You can watch a lot of different discussions around what is a cybersecurity role really. Is that an ethical hacker? Is it a pen tester? Is it a legal position? It's all of them. So when you talk about the technical track, which is what EC Council focuses mainly on, how do I get an entry-level position there? Well, usually you're going to start in IT. You're going to start in a help desk type position. And you may have a little bit more of a cybersecurity flair where you go in as a certified cybersecurity technician. And your job there is you're doing firewall maintenance, right? You're configuring web application firewalls. You're contributing to cybersecurity processes in the organization. And then your objective is, after a couple of years of building experience and working in these networks, now you want to be a part of the pen testing team. So I don't think you can necessarily jump straight to the top every single time, right? The other complexity that I think comes into this question, like you said, it's a big question.
Yep.
You have to look at the maturity of the organization that you're going to work for.
Great.
And that's a big thing, right? Not all brands are created equal. And not all organizations are as mature as others. If I go into a small local business, say it's a print shop down the street, and they've got a small computer network, they've got some basic office equipment, a couple of employees, you probably don't have an enormous IT staff and a pen testing team and digital forensics investigations. They're most likely contracted with a managed service provider that's going to do all of their IT and cybersecurity for them. So your job doesn't exist in that case.
Right.
You think, well, I want to work there. Well, if you want to be a cybersecurity professional, go work for the MSP that supports that business. And there's a lot of jobs there, right? Those MSPs, they're hiring, some of the bigger ones, they've got 30, 40, 50 positions open on their SOC.
Wow,
and they're constantly rotating because they promote from within. Their entry point is that level 1, and they're looking for an advanced cybersecurity team. So they promote quickly. But if you go to a bigger organization, right, that has a little bit more maturity, like let's fast forward to the big ones. Go out and look at a place like Walmart. Walmart has huge cybersecurity teams, right? Baked in services based on every single business line and division, and they have the funding and definition of the roles. So you're not going to jump straight to the top of a mature organization.
Right.
You're going find that entry point, and it could be help desk, it could be customer support, it could be one of those areas where you get into the IT staff, you get your cybersecurity certifications, and you start getting those cyber assignments. But I think a lot of those bigger organizations, unless you're very experienced, if you're just starting in your career, you've got to start at the bottom and work your way up. Your certification won't just fast forward you to the top.
So, folks, if nothing else, so we've done 70 episodes of this thing now. And there it is again, somebody else recommending help desk. Don't avoid help desk positions if you can get them. Because the idea is, if I'm hearing things correctly from Steve, from you, and from others, get your foot in the door and then work your way up. You will do that. That happens in IT. That's the whole idea. We sometimes hear folks saying, I don't want to take a help desk job. It's not where I want to be. Well, it's not where you're going to be. But get your foot in the door.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If you go into the military, you're going to boot camp. And you're going to spend a couple of years, eating dirt, and then you're going to make your way up. And
right.
it gets great after you get through that part. But if you want to shortcut that, I wish you all the luck.
You're also helping me out here. I made a note to promote MSP careers on social media. Thank you. That's a great one. Love it. All right. So speaking of careers, are you optimistic? We'll get you out of here with this. Optimistic? Are you cautiously optimistic about this skills-based hiring push? I'm sure you've heard this come up before, but the White House has an initiative where it's directly impacting cyber, and they're trying to promote skills-based hiring to close that skills gap. Are you optimistic there?
So I tell you what, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the White House at ONCD, talking to Director Coker about that initiative. I also spent some time at the Pentagon with the Workforce Innovation Directorate, talking to the director there about the skills-based hiring initiative, and I understand what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely in support of what they're trying to do, and I'm very optimistic that it'll make it through all of the lawyers in the federal government, and it'll end up on the other side with the same intention that they set out to do. Mm-hmm. But the skills-based hiring, it actually goes hand in hand with the last question, right? Which is, we take a lot of people and we hire them into positions based on credentials that they have. But the question is, can they actually do the job, right? The CEH program is structured with a tremendous amount of hands-on in the program. You're going to spend 60% of your time in labs. You're going to be learning how to do the job.
Right.
So there are other things that aren't necessarily created equal, where you can get a credential, but you don't have the hands-on skills. So you trust the credential, put them in a position, and then they can't actually do the job. So a part of this is, are they effective when they get hired? That's one driver for skills-based hiring. The second is, a lot of the federal roles, across the military, you look at FBI roles, Department of State, Department of Justice, all these different groups, they've always required at least a bachelor's degree to apply.
Right.
So they always wanted a university degree before they'll even talk to you. They've removed that requirement in a lot of the federal roles, saying, listen, we need a skilled workforce. And that doesn't always, we're precluding a huge part of the workforce that's non-degreed professionals that are technically amazing. So let's remove that hurdle and let's focus on the skills. The place where I think they have a gap is, how do they actually say, I've assessed those skills for the hire? They don't really have a platform for that, and they can't prescribe a specific platform. So it's kind of up to the departments to figure out how to handle that. That's where, groups like we come in. EC Council comes into that. MyComputerCareer comes into that. How do we start proving that we've got the skills and we have skills-based programs that churn out candidates that are actually capable of doing the job and have the skills? Yeah. So that's a good question, is when you're looking at what certification do I go after? What learning do I go after? Does it have a skills-based element baked into it? Or is this literally like a theoretical lecture program? And you're going to find that in how many labs, the complexity of the labs, the depth of those labs that you're going to go through. That's the entire skills process. So I'm optimistic, but just like that, trust but verify. Let's see how it pans out when it gets to JAG and all the lawyers, and what they end up with.
Love that insight. The optimist in me also loves the idea and says that all of these big businesses and corporations that have signed on to this are going to implement skills-based hiring and remove degree requirements. The pessimist in me knows it doesn't always move that quickly. which is showing up. You see 6% of organizations right now are actually implementing skills-based hiring who agreed to do so, or some low number like that. So, we need more folks to get on board. But to your point, and I love it, the idea is a great one.
Yeah, it's a tough one to roll out. But
Yeah.
I had mentioned before we got cut off before, there's two versions of the CEH. So I know that's a part of the topic here. We've got the CEH Practical, which is a skills-based exam. It's not the knowledge-based exam. That's a case where you're going to go through, you have to perform the actual work of an ethical hacker in the exam and have that outcome. So that's an ANAB accredited practical examination that actually is proof of skills, helps with that skills-based hiring initiative.
Got it. So I'm one of the people that was part of the Social Security hack that just happened nationwide. Any advice for me?
Good luck.
Good luck it is.
Yeah. So some simple.
I'm kidding, Steve. I am. I'm
well,
good.
You can sign up for identity theft protection services.
We do have some, and it's helping a lot. Yeah,
that's the way to go. Call the creditors. Call anywhere doing your credit scores. Lock your profiles. Make sure nobody can open a loan in your name because they're going to try.
Yeah, of course, and nationwide too. Back to the need. This isn't new for you, but we're seeing major attacks like that. Over and over and over again. And now that our Social Security numbers can be hacked, with such a wide number. That's scary, and we need qualified folks to go out there and fight these bad guys.
Yeah, and file your taxes fast. That's a big recommendation. There's a lot of tax fraud that happens when those Social Security numbers go out.
Amen. Thank you for that, by the way.
It's not tax day, by the way. It's the second you can.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. Thank you. Steve, this has been amazing. And I very much appreciate you staying on and working through the technical issues. Edward, we do see your note. Thank you for the love. Very much appreciate it. Doesn't see it. Can you please advise on how the CES test students? Lex, again, I think that there's some info earlier in our chat that'll help you a lot with some of these questions you have. So as soon as we end, you can go back and you can watch the replay. And if not, please feel free to send us a note, and we'll try and track those answers down for you. But Steve, I want to get you out of here, but I certainly want to say thank you again for joining us, and thank you for all the information. And where can folks go and find more?
Yeah, you can go to MyComputerCareer. It's obviously one of EC Council's partners, or feel free to go to eccouncil.org. All of our programs are listed up there, and we're always happy to help.
Fantastic. Folks, next week we'll be here, same time, same place, different subject. We'll let you know what that is here shortly. But thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend. And Steve, obviously you do the same. So we will see you here next week. And Steve, if you don't mind hanging for just a second.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.